Okay, here we have the HE448-ES9, which means it's a stationary box that's 9 foot. Your control panel on the inside, your main, your control transformers, control transformer 1 and 2. This is your control transformer that runs your starters and your cooler and all of your 110 controls. And you have your fuses here and here, and then your starters for each motor. Resets and amperages can be controlled on each starter here, and resets are here. You would need to hook in your service ground from your main, coming from your power, into this service ground here. Usually we ship these with these loose, so that if you wanted to move it you could. But if you see, there is a ground here. You'll hook your 3 mains in on top here. If we shut the door to control the machine, you have your start stop buttons, one for each 50 horse motor, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you have a 30 horsepower motor for your hydraulics, and then you have your 2 horsepower motor that runs your belt to take the material out from underneath it. When you start these up, you're going to want to start each one in series. You will hit the start button for this one, let the motor run to the proper RPM, then go down in series after that. Never try to start 2 at one time, or try to start all 4 at one time. You'll kick your main breaker out if you try to do that. So you start 1, let it get to the proper RPM, 2, then 3, then 4, and then you start your belt underneath your machine first, and then you would start your 30 horsepower hydraulic pump. This is the controls for your cylinder to work your carriage. If it's in the off position, nothing will work. If you turn it into hand, you'd be able to jog the carriage back and forth by mashing these 2 buttons, forward or reverse. When you're ready to run, just turn it to auto and the carriage works in automatic, running back and forth. If we come to the side here, this is your hydraulic valve that controls your cylinder. From here, these 2 silver levers are to control the pause in between the shift from the spool end of your cylinder from the rod to the piston end. It does not control speed, it only controls how smooth the cylinder transitions from back to forward. We've already preset these and the pressure, but if you want to, you would adjust those by screwing in or out to increase or decrease. This is your gauge here. This gauge would need to be running anywhere from 500 to 1500 psi. Usually they stay around 1000, which is how we set them up. Here is your flow control. This flow control, if you were to push it loosen and push it back, it would slow it down. If you push it forward, it speeds up the speed of your carriage. The silver knob on top is to control the pressure on this gauge here. If you need more pressure, you would unscrew this and take your Allen wrench to screw in down on top to increase and out to decrease pressure, which you should not have to do that. It's already set from here. Oil cooler is here. 110 control from the transformer inside of your box, which will basically just cool your oil. Tank, put oil in here. We recommend using AW32 or 46, either or. This will tell you the temperature of your oil. Operating temperature should be anywhere from 100 to 160-ish inside of there. This is to cut your oil on and off. This, once you get it and set it up, would need to be set in this position and fixed to where it could not be cut off. If you cut this off, what it will do is kill the supply of oil going to your pump, which will burn it up. So that's not good. But for transportation purposes, we leave these in the off position. You will need to turn this on when you get it. If we move down the side of the machine to the carriage, motor, belt, this is the adjustment for your belt. You would loosen this bolt here, come down to here where these double nuts are, and you can pull down to control the tension of this pulley here down onto your belt. This would increase the tension on your belt to make it run tighter if it mistracks. Also, you have tension control on the back of your belts here, loosening the bolts up on your motor here, which I'll show that when I get on top and a little bit better. Here you have a V-wheel roller that runs your track, and you have 2 UHMW wipers on each side. They're just to keep the shavings off the track. You have 4 of these on each side of your machine, so it'd be 4 on each side. Bearings are here. Grease fittings are on the side of each bearing. You would need to grease the machine once every 40 hours, 3 to 4 shots per bearing. This is another roller. This is your end roller. So if we go underneath and look at this end roller, this end roller has 2 lock nuts on the back. After you start this up, you would need to run this for probably 10 hours, and then you need to go back through and make sure that everything, including all nuts and bolts, are tight on this thing, because after a while of wearing, you need to check that. If we go up, this is another view of your tensioner here. You would unloosen these bolts here, 4, and then use this, and there's one on the opposite side that would push the motor back in the other direction to tighten it. It's another belt, another motor. All 4 tensioners are all the same on each side. They each have a grease fitting here on the outside. You grease that once a week as you grease your head bearings. The V-wheel rollers that are on here, you will not need to grease. They're self-sealing, not a problem. Now if we move to the front here where your belt is, your belt has a tensioner here. So as you start running your machine, if you notice your belt is running too far in one direction, if it's moving this way and starts rubbing here, you would need to loosen these bolts here and push out. If the belt's running to the high side, which we call the high side, if it's moving this way, you would always push out on the side that it's running towards to make it go the other direction. Small corrections on these belts. If you push it too much on one side, you will stretch the belt, and it'll be impossible to ever get it to track properly. Now this is your track here that runs and goes up to your motor. There's no maintenance on this track. You should do nothing but just make sure that it's clean at all times underneath here. Keep it blown off each day to keep shavings from packing up underneath it. Now these boxes here, we'll call this box 1 here. These boxes, you have your main lines running into these boxes, and then these boxes hook inside of here to your 2 lines running to your motor when they go into the track. The reason why we do this is in case you ever have a bad connection from here to your motor, you could disconnect your wires and only replace the wires from this box in your track to your motor instead of having to pull it out all the way to your main control panel box. This would be box number 1 on this side. Same thing. Here's a view of your 30 horse and your cooler from the back. Now each motor has 2 grease fittings on it. You're going to want to grease a shot maybe. 1 shot of grease, 2 shots of grease once a week. Here is your oil filter, which has been replaced. There's a date on it. What we recommend is changing your oil filter about once every 200 hours. Now, for transportation purposes, your control panel is bolted to the machine here, through here. Here's 1 bolt. There's 1 bolt down at the bottom here, and then there's 2 more on the other side. We recommend when you get it on site to take these bolts loose and put rubber in between here so that this box is not taking the shock of the cylinder when it moves back and forth. But for transporting, we do it this way so that it does not move. Now let's go up onto the box and look at your knives. Your cylinder, from the top view down, you have one grease fitting at the back here, and then there's one underneath on the front. These are wear strips. You can pull up to get to your knives to change them when you run them outside of the box. They are on both sides. UHMW wear strips here inside of your box. What you would want to do is this is rubbing this plate. You want a 0 tolerance in here on this plate. So as this wears, you're going to want to loosen this from the back side here. Bolts all the way around. Take the plate, turn it over, put this in at the bottom, push it down against your bed plate here. Re-drill the holes and tighten it down. That's not something that has to be done very regular, but okay, knives. When you change your knives, what you're going to want to do is loosen these bolts. To loosen this bolt, you would pull this way. So you would actually turn it to the right because you're screwing in on all of these bolts. Pull your knife out, set another one in. And if you look at your